So if you want to avoid situations like that, it's important to properly set up your Coyote shotgun and pattern it before you go hunting. For Coyote shotguns, I currently run two. One is this Mossberg 930 with a 28-inch barrel, and I'm running a Carlson's Coyote choke in it. And the ammunition I'm using is Fiocchi 2 3/4 inch No. 4 nickel-plated buckshot. And I've had really good success with this setup. I'm also running on it rifle sights, and the reason I'm running rifle sights on it is for two reasons. One is when I patterned the shotgun, I found out that it impacted slightly to the left. So by installing the rifle sights, I was able to correct that. The other issue I've had sometimes when predator calling with a shotgun is that when the animal comes in, instead of keeping my head down on the shotgun and aiming like I'm supposed to, I'll often keep my head up and watch the animal as it moves. So by installing these rifle sights, it always helps ensure that I have a good sight picture, and it helps prevent me from doing that. And I've greatly improved my success when calling predators with a shotgun by doing that. My other Coyote shotgun is this Mossberg 835. Currently it has on it a 24-inch barrel with a modified choke, and the load I use for that setup is Hornady Heavy Magnum Coyote nickel-plated BB. I've also in the past run it with a 28-inch barrel, and again with a Carlson's Coyote choke. And with that setup, I've used the Fiocchi load with great success, and also in the past I've used the Winchester 3.5-inch No. 4 buck, which has 54 pellets in it. That's worked very well out of that setup with the 28-inch barrel and the Carlson's choke tube. So what I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to take this shotgun here and I'm going to install rifle sights on it just like I have on the other shotgun. And I'm going to sight those rifle sights in, then after that I'm going to pattern it with these various shotgun loads that I have here. So here you can see I've installed the rifle sights in the shotgun. So next step is going to be to sight it in. In order to do that, I'm going to install a tight choke. Here I've installed the Carlson's Coyote choke. And I'm going to use bird shot, and I'm going to shoot it at short range, probably about 10 yards. And then I'm going to adjust the sights until the tight pattern of the bird shot is aligned with my point of aim. And that should roughly align the sights with the bore. And after I've sighted the shotgun in, I'm going to pattern it with the various loads I have here and some choke combinations, and I'm going to pattern it about 40 yards to see how it performs. And it's always important to pattern your Coyote shotgun before you use it for hunting. The reason being, you want to know exactly what your effective range is with a particular choke combination and the shotgun load that you're using. Failing to do that can result in a lot of missed animals. Another reason you should pattern your shotgun before you go hunting with it is the fact that shotguns don't always shoot straight. It's not uncommon for a particular load to actually go to the left or to the right of your point of aim. The only way you'll know that's happening is if you pattern your shotgun. So first I'm going to shoot this with bird shot at close range in a tight choke, and then make sight adjustments based off that. Alright, so I'm going to move the sights up and to the left a little bit. Alright, I adjusted the sights some more and put up a fresh target. Now I'm going to check it again. Alright, that's what the pattern looks like. So you can see the bulk of the shot is now going right to the point of aim. This hole right here is most likely from the wad, but this is definitely where the shot went. Alright, I've moved the target out to 40 yards. Now I'm going to pattern it with the Fiocchi load, also using the Carlson's Coyote choke. I'm going to see how it patterns at 40 yards. Alright, so that's what we got at 40 yards, not a real tight pattern, but there's only 27 pellets. So this is probably out towards the max effective range of that cartridge. Alright, we got a fresh 40-yard target here. Now we're going to try the Winchester 3.5 inch Magnum number 4 buck. Alright, definitely a more devastating load at that range. It's got like 54 pellets in it, so it makes a pretty good pattern. Alright, so now we're going to try the Hornady Heavy Magnum Coyote nickel plated BB. So there we go, that's how it did at 40 yards. It's an okay pattern. Now the BB isn't anywhere near as hard hitting as the number 4 buck, so although this is a good pattern, this is again pretty much the maximum extent of the range for that particular load, I think. The plated loads penetrate a lot better than the unplated lead buckshot, so this nickel plated BB tends to penetrate really good, but it's not very hard hitting. So the Fiocchi plated number 4 buckshot is pretty hard hitting, but it's not really a long range load is what it looks like. So I'd say as far as 40 yard effectiveness, the order would be number 1 would be the Winchester 3.5 inch Magnum number 4 buck, number 2 would be the Hornady nickel plated BB, and number 3 would be the Fiocchi nickel plated number 4 buck. Alright, so I've set a target up at about 26 yards. I'm going to try the Fiocchi load again at that range and see how it does at that range. So there we go, that's a pretty good pattern. So it looks like the sweet spot for this load is probably about 25 yards. So this is probably definitely a very effective load at about 30 yards, maybe 35. You could definitely push it to 40, but I think 40 is the max extent of the range, shooting with a Carlson's Coyote choke and the Fiocchi number 4 buckshot load. So this would be kind of a close range load, and the Winchester 3.5 inch Magnum be more of a long range load. Though I will say that this plated buckshot does penetrate better than the plain lead buckshot. But the 3.5 inch load definitely has more range and a denser pattern at long range, which is kind of to be expected with it being a 3.5 inch Magnum and having 54 pellets. The Fiocchi load's only 2 3/4 inch, and it's got 27 pellets in it. But it does pretty good at 30-ish yards or so, and under, I'd say. Probably with the max range again at 40 yards. The Fiocchi load also recoils a lot less than that 3.5 inch Magnum load, so that's an advantage to it as well. Well, up until now, I've done all this testing with a Carlson's Coyote choke, which is a pretty tight choke. However, the Hornady Heavy Magnum Coyote nickel-plated BB, according to the manufacturer, is designed to work best with a modified or improved cylinder choke. So what I've done is I've replaced the Carlson's Coyote choke with a modified choke, and I've placed the target back at 40 yards, and I'm going to try a 40-yard pattern with the Hornady Heavy Magnum Coyote nickel-plated BB at 40 yards and see what happens. So there we go, that's the 40-yard pattern. That's also a pretty effective pattern. So I can't say for sure if it's better than it was with the Carlson's choke or not. And looking at them side by side, I can't say there's much difference either way. There's the 40-yard pattern with the Carlson's choke, and there's the 40-yard pattern with the modified choke. Not sure I can see any discernible difference. So in conclusion, I've successfully installed rifle sights on this Mossberg 835. I've sighted in the sights and I've patterned it with a couple loads in choke tube combinations. So what I found was that using the Carlson's Coyote choke tube and the Fiocchi number 4 buck, this is probably an effective weapon at about 30-35 yards, pushing it at 40, but probably 30 to maybe a little bit over 30 is probably the maximum effective range of this shotgun and the Carlson's Coyote choke tube with the Fiocchi number 4 buck. Also found that the Winchester 3.5 inch Magnum number 4 buck is definitely a long range load, plenty effective at 40 yards. I know in the past I've taken coyotes at about 50 yards of this load in this choke tube, so this is definitely probably a 50 yard, maybe pushing a little bit more load when you're working with coyotes. Also tested out the Hornady nickel plated BB which is a load I've used in the past. Usually run it with a modified choke because that's what Hornady recommends, modified or improved cylinder. However, I used both the Carlson's Coyote choke tube and a modified choke tube at 40 yards, and it appeared as if there wasn't much difference in the pattern. So it appears that I could use the Carlson's Coyote choke tube and probably have about the same results, is what it looks like. That may have something to do with the fact that this uses a flight control wad. Maybe the choke isn't affecting how it comes out the barrel as much, I don't know. But although it's recommended for a modified and worked just fine with the modified, it seemed to have a very similar pattern at about 40 yards with the Carlson's choke tube too. So looks like you might be able to use either one of those. So this shotgun's now ready to go for predator hunting. I think that about the effective range is going to be at 40 yards for most of the number 4 buckshot loads. Maybe a little less with the Fiocchi. But even with the Hornady BB, it's a 40-yard load. Although that doesn't seem to penetrate and hit as hard as a number 4 buck in my experience. But anyway, this shotgun is ready to go. So hopefully with the addition of these rifle sights, I'll have a lot less missed coyotes, and I'll shoot it a lot better. All right, another note on the Hornady Heavy Magnum Coyote nickel-plated BB. I think I may have not been as clear before. It does penetrate well, and it does penetrate better than unplated number 4 buck. So it does penetrate pretty decently, but it is a small pellet, and it just does not seem to hit as hard on coyotes as the number 4 buck, especially the plated number 4 buck. So it's fairly decent on penetration in my experience, but it does not hit as hard as a number 4 buck, plated or otherwise. But also it does make a pretty good fox load if you're calling gray fox at under 30 yards. It is pretty good on those. And it does take coyotes. Effectively, I've taken coyotes with it, but it is definitely not as hard hitting as a number 4 buck. But it does penetrate pretty decently, and definitely a little bit better than unplated number 4 buck. But plated number 4 buck is definitely a lot more hard hitting than the plated BB. So these are just the results I got with a different shotgun, and you may have different results. So always check your shotgun and your loads and pattern them first before you go hunting. If you do that, you'll have a much more successful time calling and taking coyotes with a shotgun.